Welcome to the Spiritual Ride podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa LeBlanc, and I am so excited to be with my friend Lauren Nikohl. Lauren is a singer, songwriter, producer, DJ, psychedelic guide. She's basically a classic manifesting generator.
Yep, I do a lot.
What is your favorite of all of those things if you had to pick one?
Um, I guess since I was a kid, it's always been singing and songwriting, I guess, but I feel like singing is definitely like my main instrument and the way that I feel like the divine wants to like express through me the most. Because yeah, I think like the voice is just like so powerful, whether it's the words or just the frequency, but I feel like people always tell me that like they really feel like my voice affected them.
That's so funny because I only made a couple notes to talk to you about because we're friends in real life. And one of the things was, do you channel your music because it it has this like high vibration. The lyrics are really powerful, but it just elevates you even when it's like a 15-second TikTok clip.
Oh, yay. Yeah, I think that, I mean, I would say that most of any creative person is somewhat channeling source energy. Um, but I do think, like, specifically, there's a lot of my songs that I would consider to be channeled just because um, a lot of times the ideas come to me when I'm in a flow state. Like, let's say I'm hiking and I have no thoughts in my mind, and the download will kind of just come in, and I hear the song. Sometimes it's a full track, sometimes it's just lyrics. Or like if I'm meditating, sometimes I'll hear an idea come through. Um, and I don't think all my songs happen like that, but I do think the ones that do happen like that have just an extra special little like sparkle or resonance with people usually, that it's like it was more so like uh source coming through me and less of like my ego creating it. So, yeah.
I feel the same way with my videos, either with the comedy ones or when I'm like talking about human design. Sometimes I'll make some notes and then the things that it's felt like it was like a download of a sentence, people were like, "Oh, I really needed to hear that." And I'm like, "I didn't, where did that come from?"
Right, exactly. I feel like we're all kind of like just channels for source, God, universe, like whatever you want to call it, to like come through. And we can be more tapped into that, I think, when we're in our flow state or meditation.
So, something really interesting about my experience with knowing you, Lauren, is we met on a retreat in Costa Rica 2 years ago. And I feel like after that retreat, everyone really quantum leapt. Like your music, you sang at the retreat and it was really beautiful. But since then, you made like a really powerful album. Everyone kind of like, I had a massive quantum leap in my life. And I was wondering, because you're really into star seeds and aliens, do you think all of us on that retreat are like from another planet?
It's a good question. And it's honestly something I think about a lot still, of just like where I'm at with this whole like starseed alien thing. Because, like, on one hand, I kind of feel like everybody has multiple lives in parallel reality, right?
Hmm.
But I do think there could be some level of like newer souls versus older souls. So perhaps the people on that trip, maybe we've just had a lot more lifetimes, because I really do have this feeling that my soul chose to incarnate on Earth to help raise the vibration of the planet, to help shift consciousness. And I think that's kind of similar for everybody that was on that trip, or anybody that considers themselves like a light worker or an empath or a star seed or like an indigo child or like whatever these terms are. Um, so again, on some level, I feel like I'm sure like everybody has multiple lifetimes,
Hmm.
maybe not necessarily on other planets. I'm not exactly sure, you know? But I definitely think that I've had lifetimes on other planets, and I think that the way that my soul has evolved through my other lifetimes is what brought me here on Earth at this time to help with the Great Awakening.
Okay. along those lines with it helping with the Great Awakening. So I actually had a mushroom trip last weekend that is so interesting what you were talking about because this is the second time I've been on mushrooms and like remembered being from somewhere else, like very specifically. And it was very painful. I was like crying about like, why am I here? And I miss my family. Like I just felt very lonely. And then they were kind of showing me like, oh, you feel lonely because you're not from here. Have you had experiences with psychedelics that you feel like show you where you're really from?
Hmm. I don't think I've had specifically with psychedelics, like past life experiences, but I've had meditations where cannabis was involved, I guess. I consider that to be kind of like a low grade psychedelic.
Hmm.
Um, but I've had experiences where I've like telepathically communicated with the Pleiadians that came through, and they, we had this whole conversation about how I was basically one of them, and there was a certain point where I was even like doubting it because of course like the ego comes in and it's like, is this even real? Is this like, am I just, talking to myself in my head? But they gave me a sign that like showed me that it was real. Um, and yeah, so I've had certain experiences that to me it would definitely show me that like whether my question too is it a past life or a future life or a parallel life or like all of the above, I don't know.
Oh my God, I love that because of all times happening now.
Yeah, right. Because when I've spoken to the Palladians and like tried to figure out, okay, like what does that mean that I'm a Palladian? Or like maybe that's just one of my other lifetimes, or potentially maybe that's like where my soul originated is kind of
Mm.
where I've been theorizing. But yeah, I kind of got the feeling in one of my meditations that the my Palladian self is either like some higher dimensional version of my soul that I can communicate with right now because it's me.
Hmm.
Um, but I also think there's a possibility that there is like a physical incarnation that I've been in the Pleiades star system. And I think that's like a future lifetime, but I don't really know. Which, yeah, is why I have that song Future Selves that is all about like this communication during meditation with these beings, and they're essentially just calling us home to remember that like we're all one and our soul uh, exists beyond this physical plane.
So, if it's a future self, do you think that it's only going to manifest if you make specific decisions in this lifetime? Do you think there's like a possibility where if you didn't choose to awaken, you wouldn't become that future self?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, the whole like free will question is definitely a big topic, I think, in spirituality. But I kind of think that our souls or the universe, God, has like this kind of grand plan, or at least in our incarnations, we kind
Hmm.
of, I think, have certain set out goals. And like maybe the way that we reach those goals is not necessarily set in stone. So that's where like free will comes in and we can maybe change our path. But I think ultimately, if there's like one specific thing that our soul was meant to do in a particular lifetime, I think that like things are going to shift in your reality and change so that you get on that path. Because, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, let's say that, like, you chose that you wanted to have this particular job, but the universe had a different plan for you. Maybe it's gonna like get you fired for some reason so that you can actually get on that path that it wanted you to be on.
That's
Yeah.
I was totally thinking about that yesterday because I was driving. I used to live in Manhattan Beach and I was in Manhattan Beach. And when I lived there before, I was going through like a really rough time. So when I used to drive over there, I would get bad feelings. But I've healed so much of that time that now I realized that that time in my life, because of that time in my life, I met my soulmate. Like, and I realized I healed so much. And thinking about all the bad things that happened, I'm like, you really realize that it was either the universe kicking you in the ass, like if it was to fire you from a job so you could get on the right path, or that nothing is really bad, that everything is literally like things are planned out for us to meet certain people. And maybe we had to be in certain environments to do that. So I just love that perspective that like the soul has a plan and it kind of allows you to be more gentle with yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a big lesson that I've just been learning again in like kind of spirals because I think we learn a lot of our lessons like in spirals, like, learn it maybe on one level and then you learn on a deeper level. Because, yeah, I've had like certain experiences that have brought me like suffering, like a friend leaving, for instance, but I've come to find that like even though my ego thinks like, oh no, like that's such a bad thing, that actually maybe needed to happen so that I could step more into this new energy of who I needed to be to ultimately like fulfill my purpose. And like maybe I'm gonna resonate with like even better friends for me that, wouldn't have come into my life if that other person hadn't left.
Totally, because those people are first of all holding space, but otherwise you are also a energetic match for that friendship, and you seem to be evolving at such a rapid pace that while it might be painful, people that aren't growing with you, it's like there's going to be a misalignment there, and you could stay connected in those relationships, but in a sense be dragged down.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we definitely all just attract in kind of where we're vibrating at. And yeah, if you're like growing and healing, like unfortunately, you're just gonna be on a different vibration than some people. And I don't think that necessarily means that like you're better than them or like, there's a better or worse. It's just like different. And, we're all just on different paths walking to the same home of like reunifying to source. But yeah, sometimes some people will fall off your path because they're just not meant to be there anymore.
I think sometimes also we have soul contracts with people that are only supposed to last a certain amount of time. And that can seem really painful, like having a deep love for a friend or a romantic relationship. But it's like maybe it was only supposed to be for that period of time.
Exactly. And I think some people like in terms of soul contracts maybe signed up to be the person that hurt you so that you could
Ooh.
then step more into your power or whatever it is.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot in my mushroom ceremonies. I broke a soul contract with someone very important to me, and it was so painful. And then the next time I did mushrooms, I saw a different layer of our relationship, and it was like I had to break the soul contract in order to fulfill the soul contract because breaking it was me choosing myself. And then once I chose myself, the next time I did mushrooms, it was like showing me like this was the relationship. You were so clouded by what you wanted it to be. But I also think that that was like that person, like I said, was very important to me. And they chose to act a certain way in this lifetime so that I could evolve and probably get on my spiritual path.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And yeah, it's definitely important, I think, to foster that perspective of like, this isn't like a bad thing happening to me. This is actually happening for me and allowing me to become even more aligned with my highest path.
Speaking of your highest path, so when I met you, you were doing music. And like I said, you sang at the retreat and everyone was like, oh my God, you're amazing. But you really quantum leapt. What was it that just really like did something happen to ignite you to like take your music to the next level because it was like so good before and then it just like jumped.
Hmm. Yeah, I have two thoughts on that. The first is just deciding to go on that trip, I feel like was kind of the initiation of the
Hmm.
quantum leap. I kind of even have chills right now as I'm saying that.
I feel the same way.
Um, but because like at the time I like didn't quite have like the finances to make it happen. I was like also just starting to DJ at that time. I had had like, I mean, I'd been practicing mostly just at home,
Hmm.
and I kind of decided to ask the retreat host, like, hey, like if I DJ for the ecstatic dance, could we like lower the price? And they agreed to that. And it was like so scary because it was like my first official DJ gig. But I
Really?
also, yeah. But I also just felt so like deep in my soul, like I know I'm meant to be there. And like if I'm meant to be there, then I trust that like it's gonna be awesome, it's gonna be great. I like put so much work into like practicing and yeah, so I think that was kind of the first phase of that quantum leap was literally just feeling the fear and doing it anyway, just like taking the leap and saying, you know what? I am a DJ. I am a conscious creator. I like am I don't know, worthy of being on that trip with all these other amazing creators. Um, so then on the trip, we had this breathwork session. I will also say I think just being around everybody's energy that whole time and like sharing my music with them and seeing how it affected everybody really just reinstilled this like confidence in that just I don't know, like the value of my music and like how
Mm.
it can shift people's consciousness. Okay, but so we had a breathwork session, and during this session, once we kind of reached this meditative state, we were guided to connect with our future self, or this like, you know, version of the future self that we are manifesting essentially. So I connected with this version of myself that was in her power. She's touring, like very successful. And um, at the time of this trip, I was like in the process of creating my album Ascend. And I had been thinking that like I needed to find somebody to like help me finish it or to like help mix and master it because I didn't think I could do it on my own because I didn't think I had like the right skills yet or whatever, or just imposter syndrome basically. Um, but yeah, basically that future version of myself told me like I can produce it on my own, like I can mix it on my own, and that just empowered me so much. Ooh, and I have chills again.
I love that.
Yeah, it just empowered me so much because then like I was like, yeah, you know what? Like I don't need anybody. Like music is literally an art form. Like it doesn't have to be one certain way. I mean, obviously I want it to sound as good as like I can make it, and I think I definitely did my best and it was awesome, but I think like ultimately it's not, you know, the perfection of the production that affects people. It's the intention and the messages and yeah, just the resonance of my voice even that I think really uh, affects people and makes a difference. So yeah, I just really had to like get over that imposter syndrome and self-doubt and realize, you know, like I can do it. And I did. And yeah, I feel like since then the music just like really took off.
Yeah, you've been like DJing and playing at other shows and like I see your Instagram and stuff all the time and you get hired to do stuff and it's like a whole different it's like a this is what I want to know. Do you choose to put in like what is that 432 hertz? Is that the number? Do you intentionally pick that when you're doing music or is it just when you're making your songs that's what it wants to be? I know all your songs aren't at that, but I know you do some of them at that level.
Yeah, so when I started learning about sound healing, I knew I wanted to tune my projects to 432 hertz, or some of them have been 528 hertz,
Okay.
one of the solfeggio frequencies. And I choose to tune it like that, but sometimes I've kind of tinkered with the project to hear like, okay, how does the song sound best if I put it in 432 versus the 528 kind of tuning. Um, but yeah, I usually intentionally choose to create it within that realm because I feel like uh, it just makes the music so much more resonant and harmonious with our natural systems.
Yeah, music is so interesting because like when I work out and stuff, I'll listen to like hip hop because it gets me like going in that sort of energy. But then there's times when I will like after I've done mushrooms or something and I'm like I can't even listen to certain music, just like my body feels almost like nauseous kind of.
Hmm.
But like your kind of music, it feels like it can almost pull you to a higher level if you're feeling maybe stagnant or something.
Yeah, and I don't know even sometimes if it is just the tuning or if it's the intention behind
Hmm.
the music. Because, yeah, I do think that the intention and just energy that you put into it is definitely a big component of that. Because, yeah, there's a lot of like mainstream hip hop or rap that, even if it was, let's say, tuned to 432 hertz, if they're rapping about like murder or like bitches at the club, like, I don't know, it's just like that kind of intention and content is just more low vibrational or could maybe cause more stress to you than messages of love and unification.
Yeah. So back to aliens. Are there certain planets that are like more musically inclined that you're aware of?
It's a good question. I can't like say specifically that I know a whole lot about that, but I mean, I guess my mind is just going into the idea that like I feel like I'm sure there are planets, I guess you could say, or even dimensions that are almost like made of music, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. I feel like music is kind of almost like the creation of everything because it's like the law of vibration, right? Everything is vibrating, everything is energy. So it's like sound waves literally create reality in a way. Like, I don't know, does that make sense?
Oh my God. No, you just reminded me of two things. One is
Okay.
once I was like, I woke up from a dream and I had been in another reality and I got this download of this beautiful song. I could hear the music, I heard the lyrics. I called my dad because he's a musician and I was like, I need to like make this a thing. And I never did because I couldn't like explain it. But I'm not the only person that I've heard of that's like when we go like I was in a different realm basically and it was all music. And it was like I wasn't listening to any
Yeah.
music. It was no song I'd ever heard. It was so beautiful and it just made me so happy and I've heard other people have similar experiences. But also, I mean, the Bible, whatever you think about the Bible, they say like in I think it's in the beginning there was the word. And if you take it back
Yeah.
to like one of the more literal translations, they talk about because it's like the vibration of sound is like what created everything.
Yeah, abracadabra means as we speak, we create. So, yeah, and I've actually heard a lot of people have experiences, whether it's like psychedelics or just meditation or even like spontaneous Kundalini awakenings, where basically like you're in this dimension or state, if you will, where you're just hearing music like from the universe. Like
Oh.
my brother actually had an experience when he was only like I think 12 or 13 years old that he like woke up in the middle of the night and he was basically in sleep paralysis, like he couldn't
Uh-huh.
move his body, but he was conscious and he basically heard these angels singing or what he interpreted as like angel music or like he thought it was heaven. And at the time we were like going to church and so he asked the priest about it. But yeah, I feel like it's almost like what if heaven, quote unquote, or the higher dimensions like are this like music that's like creating everything else. Like I don't know, it's just a theory, but
Wow, that's like so wild. I feel like I need to think about that when I'm on mushrooms. Because
Yeah.
that's another thing about what helps, like I found with psychedelics, like when you do ayahuasca, they sing Icaros, which it's like they're singing this music that's making the medicine work. And I've heard of experiences where people were at a ceremony and one guy went to the bathroom and didn't hear the music. And so the medicine never started working on him, but everyone else was like tripping. And like when I do mushrooms, I have a very curated playlist that's on shuffle. So I'm not like picking what order the songs come, but they always drive the experience of exactly what I need and like hit on the healing that needs to happen in a way. It's like the universe is a DJ and it's on my phone, like, and now we're gonna do this song, and now Alyssa needs to deal with this. And it's like I have like 200 songs on there, and it'll always be like the 50 songs that it's the music though that pulls like the whatever it is out of me that needs to be healed.
Yes, yeah. I've had a psychedelic experience, just like one that comes to mind specifically, where every single song that started playing, it was almost like it was exactly what my thoughts had like just been thinking. And it's so trippy. And I also really like to use music as like a divination tool. Like if I'm driving somewhere, I'll put my liked songs on shuffle and I'll ask the universe a question. And a lot of times I get like a song as like an answer that's like so spot on.
Oh my
So
God, I love that.
yeah.
That
Try.
is like super exciting. So tell us about your spiritual awakening, because I know you used to go to church and that sort of thing. What,
Mhm.
like, did you always kind of feel like, did you always kind of feel like something else was going on?
Okay, yeah. So I had one like very big experience that I would point to as like that was my awakening, but I do think it's been kind of a lifelong journey that when I was in church and I was going to like confirmation classes when I was probably like around 12, I would say. I feel like I was the only one in the class that would ever like ask questions. Like I would be like, wait a minute, like why if in the first book, if God like smites the people with the Tower of Babel or whatever, I'm like, why in the second book is it like, oh, God loves all his children? I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So I think I definitely started having like a lot of questions from a young age. And around the end of high school is when I started to become agnostic and just not really agreeing with like religion. And
Mhm.
then my first year of college, I became atheist and had this whole like existential crisis of like, what is the meaning of life? And and I actually found a lot of like joy in atheism at the time,
Really?
but because I was starting to like understand, especially based on this work by Nietzsche that I had read in one of my classes in college. It was kind of I don't remember if it was like a poem or like a fictional work, but it was kind of getting at this whole message of like, imagine if a demon came to you in the middle of the night and told you you had to live your entire life over again. Like, would you be okay with that? Is kind of the message that it was giving. And it made me realize, like, oh, like the way that we give life meaning is by like creating that meaning for ourselves. Or like imagine if you're like on your deathbed in the future, like looking back on your life, like what would you have done to be able to say like that you'd given your life meaning? And also like if you weren't wanting to live your entire life over again, it's kind of like denying your entire experience of who you are right now, because every negative experience, positive experience that you had, while of course, like we don't think we want to relive those negative experiences, ultimately they created who we are today. So, like, it was meaningful, you know? So, yeah, I think that was really helping me to find meaning in my life at that time. But My big like spiritual awakening experience was when I think it was about a year or two after moving to Los Angeles. I met some friends who were into psychedelics, and so we tried mushrooms for the first time, or at least me and my partner did. And I just had this total out of body experience, which is not necessarily common for everybody, especially the first time. I think we have our ego deaths when we're ready for them,
Mhm.
but evidently I was ready at that time. And yeah, like I was basically just like laying down on the beach like for most the whole trip. And it felt like time had started to like collapse in on itself so that I was within the eternal now, outside of time and space. And it felt like the universe was showing me the multiverse and how it worked. There was a point where I connected with unity consciousness and basically like merged with all that is and realized, like, oh, I'm God, the trees are God, you're God, everything is quote unquote God or source or universe or just this energy, that it's all connected, like it's all one thing, which made me realize that I actually have a soul, or like whatever you want to call it, an energy body or an astral body or some form of consciousness that exists beyond this physical plane. And we actually continue to live on forever as souls. So death isn't really real, it's not the end. Um, and there was another point of that experience where I felt like I had reached this dimension, if you will, that felt a lot like what people describe as heaven, just because it was this very like loving frequency, and it felt like I was remembering I had been there many times before. And like I saw my dad and my sister's souls there even. And I remembered, like, oh, yeah, I've been here with them many times before. Because I think we reincarnate in these, like, soul families or soul groups. And yeah, so it was like, and I say dimension because it felt like I was on the beach that I was on, but it was just this different, like, frequency of it. Or like I was, like, my astral self in that place. Um, yeah, so coming out of that, I feel like I had just totally remembered my purpose in wanting to come here on Earth. And like right before I'd kind of woken up out of it, I was in like what a lot of people describe as the void. It's just like total darkness. And I heard a few voices that were not my own that were gently telling me, stay, stay. And I just intuitively knew that I could choose whether or not I wanted to stay in this reality or like quote unquote die and go to experience a different reality. But I actually don't think that I would have like physically died if that had been the choice. I think perhaps like a walk-in soul would have come in, if that makes sense. Or sometimes I even wonder if I am the walk-in soul. I don't know. Because I do think like who I am from like that day forward just feels like a totally different person. And yeah, like coming out of it, I was looking at the world as if like I had like new eyes again, like I was just a baby, because it was like seeing the world for the first time again, and I was just crying like this is so beautiful. And like I barely even remembered how to be a human. Like my partner had to help me like go to the bathroom. Yeah, so from that day, I've just been fascinated with all things spirituality and psychedelics, and like yeah, just truly know that like this is not all there is. Like we are really spiritual beings having a human experience.
It's so wild, everything that you say, because this is why I know that this stuff is real. Because I had the first time I took mushrooms, I had the same experience. I was with my former partner, my former best friend, and my former brother-in-law. Must have been soul contracts. But it was the same thing where we were like in Joshua Tree, and it was like you said, you were on the beach, but you were somewhere else. I remembered being somewhere else with them, and I was like, oh yeah, you guys, we're like gods and goddesses. And
I
it's
have
like,
chills.
how can we all, yes, chill, how can we all have like similar experiences the first time we take mushrooms? And we're just laughing. And I like remembered that I wanted to come down here with them. And
Mm.
it was just like you said, it's just, it's like it's like really remembering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's not discovering. Because I think in order to incarnate, we all have to go through like the veil of forgetting, people call it.
Mhm.
Because like if we incarnated into a physical human body and already remembered that we were God, source, universe, I don't think we'd be able to have the experience of being a separate human. So it's like we kind of have to forget in order to re-remember. And it's like this cycle that happens again and again so that the universe can keep experiencing itself. And yeah, I've heard so many people with similar stories, and not just with psychedelics, with like meditation, Kundalini awakening, a lot of
Mhm.
near-death experiences have a very similar thing happen. And yeah, I think it just really just validates to me once again that like it's all one and those experiences are very real.
The thing that gets me though is like I have those experiences and it's like I'm 5,000% sure. And then after it wears off, I still know it, but do you find sometimes it's still hard to like 100% believe it? I'm like, I know that this is true. I know that I'm from another place. I know that the human experience is not that big of a deal, but then it still kind of seems like it is sometimes. Do you feel that?
Oh, for sure. Which which again I think is almost like necessary for us to continue to experience ourselves as humans. Um, and I find it's almost like having like a really good dream and you like remember it most right when you like awaken out of it. And then like the more you go on throughout your day or throughout your life, it's like it kind of fades away and like you don't remember it as much. But like there's still some almost like a feeling that you know. And
Yes.
yeah.
That's the best way to describe it. And I also think, like you said, we wouldn't like the things that we're here to learn. If we just knew that, like, hey, we're gonna go back home and none of this really matters that much, we wouldn't take it as seriously because
Yeah.
it'd be like, oh, well, this doesn't really matter because it's just an illusion. So yeah. But I feel like each time like I hold on to the belief, I hold on to the knowing a little bit more. Like I have a little more, it's like a
Mm,
little more remembering, but then
mm.
you stub your toe and you're like, wait, like I'm a human. What's going on?
I think that's also why integration is so important for psychedelic experiences, because it's like we can learn all these lessons and be shown all these amazing things, but then we like come back to our real regular life, quote unquote. And if we don't do that integration work to kind of bring those lessons into our daily life, then it's like you just forget and you go back into your like old patterns. Um, and yeah, I feel like integrating it maybe means like for us, we've I mean, I don't know at what point you became vegan, but I definitely became like vegetarian then vegan
Yeah, same.
because of this understanding that we're all one. And it's like other beings suffering is also my suffering, and I don't want to create more suffering in the world. So to me, I'm like choosing to live from more of this place of unconditional love by not purchasing like dead animal products. Yeah.
That's makes so much sense. I became vegetarian when I was a kid, so I wasn't like spiritually awakened, but it was that same feeling of, oh my God, I love my cat. Like it's the same thing. But I know a lot of people that I've done ayahuasca with that following psychedelics have had that same experience where they're like, oh shit. And they're seeing things and that makes them go vegan.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think the
So I think
oh no, go ahead.
I think that that's definitely like one form of integration of just basically like taking what you learn and implementing it into your life. Um, whether that's through like your choices of self-care or how you treat other people. Yeah.
Yeah, I was because I was going to ask you about integration because I have your integration journaling and I know that that can be really good. And I think it's always also sometimes like the the plant medicine shows us something and then I don't like to say that the universe like tests us, but like then something is presented where it's like, are you going to believe what I showed you about yourself? Are you going to make the same choices again? Like,
hmm
do you think that the universe tests us or whatever you were going to
I
say?
mean, kind of, but I would maybe not call it a test. I would call it like an opportunity to learn the lesson or to
Mhm.
like embody the lesson. It's not like the universe has some sort of like malicious intent, like, are you gonna do good or bad? Are you gonna go to heaven or hell? But it's kind of like, hey, like you learn this lesson, here's an opportunity for you to embody it now so you can further grow as a soul,
Yeah.
you know?
Did you, because you seem to have like a lot of self-worth and self-love, did you find that before, because for me, before spirituality, I did not. Do you find that that helped you cultivate this, or have you always kind of just liked yourself?
I would say that like when I was younger, I do think I had a certain level of confidence, but I don't think it was like real true confidence. I think it was like me trying to put on a mask of confidence.
Hmm.
And yeah, no, I definitely used to be way more of an anxious person and just more like disconnected from myself. So I think along my spiritual journey and with the help of psychedelics, I've just learned just how important self-care is and and yeah, how important it is to love yourself because if we're all one, then the more that you love yourself, the more you can love others. And it's like almost like all love stems from your self-love. Because like I had this experience one time with LSD that I was like looking at my like fingernails and like my toes because I used to be really bad at like picking at them. And I had this like epiphany or thought process that was like, how can I expect the the world to like be kind to each other if I can't even be kind to my own body? Because like it's like I'm kind of like hurting myself. Like sometimes it would be to the point where it would bleed. And I don't know how that habit started, but like yeah, the psychedelics really showed me like, hey, like that's not very loving to like pick at yourself basically. And I was like, dang, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Like the more that we love ourselves, the more that our external reality becomes more loving.
100%. I think you and I always talk about that everything is one and I don't understand it to the level that you do. Like I feel like you have a knowing. I understand it intellectually, but it hasn't quite clicked in my head. But what you said about I realized that if we're all one, I feel like ayahuasca and mushrooms love me a lot because they basically saved me and I love them, but it's like because we're one. So that because I'm like, why are the plants so why is ayahuasca help so many people? Why, why do they the souls of them do this deep work and it's hard work and you know also it can be painful for the plants, I'm guessing, because I know there's problems with the way they're harvesting it and stuff. But you just made me realize that like on a little different perspective, like the mushrooms are if we're one, the mushrooms are me. And that's why
Mhm.
I can understand them as a consciousness because they're not just a it's like unless you've done it, you can't understand that they have like their own spirit, you know?
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
and I kind of think psychedelics are almost like uh it's like the universe or even the aliens you could say. It's like left itself this almost like in Super Mario, you know, when you get the mushroom, you like power up.
Yes.
It's kind of like if you think about it in the this symbology of like if this is a video game, the universe like left itself these little like power-ups to like discover.
So synchronicity, because I was feeling that this morning when I was walking Teddy. I think of that
Oh,
often, like the video game analogy and like leveling up in life. And I was thinking about money in that way and how like we really can call in money, but like in a video game, it doesn't have to be like the hard work or whatever we think it is. But I do think every time I do psychedelics, I level up my awakening. The last time they even told me, they were like, stop always saying that you're like healing yourself and say that you're just awakening more. Because if you keep focusing on healing, you're going to keep finding things that are wrong with you. So
right.
it's like a leveling up process, 100%.
Mm. Right. And yeah, I feel like there's a lot of that in the spiritual community, which, like, you know, of course, I think everybody should do some of the healing work and the shadow work. But yeah, it's like we can't get too caught up on always needing to heal because
Hmm.
then we're constantly thinking that we're not just whole as we are. Because even as like an quote unquote unhealed human being, I'd argue that we're still like perfectly imperfect because that's the way that the universe wanted to incarnate and have a unique experience. You know, the universe wants to experience every single thing that it can, whether it's positive or negative, because it's all one. Yeah, it just I think, yeah, we're all perfectly imperfect, and it helps to say like I am already healed or I am already whole, even if you're continually working on your healing.
Yeah, I think so because I also think that as humans, we're probably never going to heal all the things in one lifetime anyways. So it's just like accepting and loving yourself where you're at because if the universe created all of us, we are whole, perfect, and complete.
Exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. Like if I am God, then like is God not perfect the way it is? Yeah.
Lauren, I love you so much. Thank you so much for your high vibration. I'm going to link all her stuff in the show notes. Listen to her music when you go for a walk on the beach or if you're doing yoga in your backyard or it's gonna uplift you and it's just really high vibe. I'm super excited to go be at your music video shoot in like a month too. That song, it's that 180 song, right? Is it a
Yeah,
different song?
which is called I'm Dreaming, which yeah, I think again touches on this whole like life is really, I feel like a dream of like the
Hmm.
universe dreaming itself into existence is kind of my interpretation.
Yeah, the first time I heard that song, I could like see it like it was like I could see a dream of colors and 80s and the beach, and it's just so cool.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, check out my psychedelic guide and integration journal if you are interested.
She also has a gratitude journal on Amazon, which I use every morning. I'm on to my second one now because I filled up the first one. So
Yay.
yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for and yeah, thanks for being on this spiritual ride.
thank you. I'm so glad to be here and excited to see where our journeys take us next.
Yes.